It's interesting. Most people want to buy more. In my experience, most people have too much and they're not properly using their tech stack. I'd rather take like 5 big pieces of the tech stack and use them really well and really shine on those than use only a tiny bit of this, tiny bit of that. Then that creates this gigantic confusion and a sense of overwhelm, and then nothing gets accomplished. Too much of a good thing is not a good thing.
Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Here we go. We've done it. I've hit the button. This whole adventure starts now. I'm excited to introduce my guest today. She is back. She is back. Previously, we chatted, and if you're curious about her background and her story, episode 334, back in 2023. And she is back to teach us and share some more wisdom. I can't wait to crack into this. Marketing leader and thought leader, entrepreneur, author, speaker. She is a visionary. She has worked with all sorts of senior roles in global multi-billion-dollar companies. She is a recipient of America's prestigious Innovation Award in 2020 and has authored with many different publications, including the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, the Toronto Star. Shout out to all of my friends in Canada. Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at Strategy Ark, Jasmine Martirossian. Welcome back.
Wow, Casey, that's quite an introduction. Thank you. Very kind of you.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. I mean, we had such a good time last time, and you were just full of this like real practical knowledge, right? There's a lot of people just kind of the hot air strategy out there, but not you. You are smashing things left and right. So I'm going to pass you this thing. You haven't held it in several years, and here it is. Okay. Go ahead.
Wow.
Grab Thor's hammer. You going to grab that?
Yeah,
Or
I got it.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
It is heavy.
Take from me Thor's hammer and smash some kind of marketing myth, a bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Banner ads, they do not work. Throw them out.
Boom. Killing the banner ads. Shots fired. All right. We'll just call it a day. That's it. That's the episode, right? Banner ads.
Done. I just saved you hundreds of thousands of dollars in some instances for some companies.
Have you ever seen them work?
Never. And this comes
I haven't
this
either.
comes from experience. Like
Yeah.
in previous roles, I have sometimes, until I learned better not to do it, spent dozens and dozens and dozens and thousands of dollars, right? And they never deliver any result. And this is what I'll say, that's something that every marketer should do. When is the last time you yourself clicked on a banner ad?
For real.
For real.
Like I just, as a marketer, I definitely don't even want the cookies involved. I know like if I click on that banner ad, I'm getting like 5 different marketing cookies, and I don't want that. You know, I know they're going to just harass me and track me, and then it's going to show up on my, yeah, I just don't want it.
And, you know, it's interesting because in a way, I'm also every marketer's nightmare myself, because now I go through the effort of disabling the cookies or allowing only the necessary ones, right?
Right.
So and I understand the pain that marketers go through. You want to know your analytics. The question is, how are marketers to do and survive and deliver results? And this is where real quality, true thought leadership, really delivering value comes in.
Yeah, like no more games, right? No more games tricking people into, you know, paying attention, tricking them to get on a sales call. They don't want to do any of this. Let's just finagle them on. And it's just such a waste of marketing spend doing that.
It wastes the marketing spend, and you actually negatively affect your brand. I mean, brand is something that people say about you when you're not in the room. It's the mental shortcut they make to come to you for services when you're seemingly not there. And now negative things stick in people's memory. Now you've served them up a very negative experience. You're not helping your role, your marketing, your results, you're actually actively hurting them. So I'm proud to say I've never engaged in black hat tactics. Google every now and then comes up. You go to those conferences and SEOs show up, and somehow Google has launched the next big update. By the way, they do several updates a day, but every now and then there are like revolutionary, groundbreaking ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are upset because never has affected any of the sites that I have run and led. Because if you do things with integrity, it actually pays off. Do the right thing.
You know, it comes to mind. You bring an interesting experience that come to mind. It is not a B2B experience, but it's a sort of a real world B2C experience where there's a new Italian restaurant that opened up in town, and the family went to it, and I had to talk to the manager within like first. Nobody came and said hi to me in like 10 minutes. And I was like, "Can someone come get me?" And then later on, my daughter had some hair in her food or whatever. It's just, and they're like, here's a $10 off. Like, it set this negative experience. And when you said, "Hey, you're wasting your spend, but you're also hurting your brand," I was thinking, like, what are you making stories that like you're that new Italian restaurant? And if anyone ever asked me about that, I go, "Man, it was kind of pricey and I didn't really like it. If I want to spend the money, I'm going to go to the other place in town." Like you just have these stories that you start creating, and you can't really track those with cookies. It's out there associated with your brand.
Not just that. I mean, it applies similarly to B2B.
Yeah.
In the case of the Italian restaurant, I bet you may have already managed. Look, you're doing it on the podcast for the whole world to hear.
Yeah.
And I bet you have shared it with neighbors, friends, and others, family members.
Yeah.
I don't think. And what's interesting, because negative experiences stick out more, right? That's why the media
Yep.
leads. If it bleeds, it leads with negative stuff. We're wired. I mean, historically, when we're hunter gatherers, it was needed for survival, right? If a threat was coming, you better knew about it,
Right.
right? There was no internet
Right.
in the Ice Age. So you had to be alert. That's why people are so wired, among other things, to notice the negative stuff. And now, as a brand, you have enabled the spreading of the negativity. The other side of that is sometimes we take the positive for granted. So, as a human, as a leader, as a person, I always try to also acknowledge the positive, because we're not hardwired to acknowledge that. But it's really important not to take the positives for granted.
Right. I love that quote, by the way. There's no internet in the Ice Age. Yeah, of course not. Of course not. But the idea that the negative spreads um more. So what other kind of things? I mean, so this whole idea you started by just absolutely destroying the banner ad industry. No banner ad will ever be purchased ever again because it's said on the show that they're bad and everyone will listen to us, right? And so where does this go? Where does it take us? Like, and why do so many people fall into this trap?
It's because it's been done. And then there is very often, this is a major mistake. Very often in their marketing effort, a company will say, look, our competitor is doing X. But it doesn't mean that the X is delivering for your competitor. There are always other factors. Do not replicate your marketing. Always be original. There's probably no better commercial than Apple's Think Different. It's so important to think different in marketing. You know, do things differently. Do not replicate what others are doing. In fact, in real life, it's happened to me a few times where somebody will say, "Oh, we know this company's. We should replicate their website." And I've seen the back end of that website because I've known the
Right.
CEO of the company who had come to me for counsel. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually not working. They
No.
have no traction. It's not delivering results. It may be cute and attractive. It's not working.
But the safety of people have already tried it. I think you raised a great point. The idea that you see other people doing this, so you think you assign to them way more logic and reasoning than maybe they had going into it, right?
Well, the entire society predisposes us to that, right? That's why there are the Academy Awards. Oscars. What does it do? It tells you, oh, this movie won the award. You got to go watch it. Now, sometimes it's a great movie. Sometimes you watch it and you can't quite understand, but because everybody's saying it, most people will kind of go with the flow. New York Times bestseller list. Why do they exist?
Yeah. Yeah. Book clubs.
Book club. It just all validates somebody else is doing it. It creates a perception of safety that it's a good. I mean, right now in the world, we're dealing with over tourism.
Yeah.
Granted, like say Barcelona is phenomenal, but like even in the comparison of the past 10 years, it is so over touristed. You can barely walk down, Las Ramblas, but everybody's going to one place instead of doing their own and seeking out other places.
Mm,
And I love Barcelona, great city, just too congested right now.
got it. Yeah. And then people hear that and they go, oh, Barcelona? No, 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 too congested. Right. And then but hopefully that maybe fixes the problem, which is that overcrowding.
I mean, Antoni Gaudi's architecture is spectacular. Again, great place to go, but sometimes you can't even move freely without touching everybody on all four sides of your body.
Jeez.
And that's too much.
Yeah, man. And you know what's interesting about the book list too? It's the social proof of everyone else is reading it. But I gotta tell you, I was talking about this the other day. The Reese Witherspoon book list. I've heard it said that like almost all the books on there are just terrible, right? So now after hearing that, now I'm dissuaded from wanting to even look at that. Um, love you, Reese, but like maybe actually read the books before you put them on your list. I don't know.
So I had a neighbor who loved to read, and
Yeah.
normally she had great tests, but she would always like offer me lots of amazing books that I found them to be amazing. But later I found out those are books she absolutely disliked. But
Really?
some of them were absolutely spectacularly amazing. There is a saying in Armenian that says taste has no friends, meaning everybody has their own taste. So I do not know much about Reese Witherspoon's book club, but I'm curious to check it out because it might actually have some gems. So the same thing is make the decision on your own.
Right.
And I think what's interesting with AI, there will increasingly more people are deferring. Don't get me wrong, I use AI too. But to me, it's really important to use AI in such a way where you know what you're using and to keep having your own judgment, not completely abdicate your judgment to artificial intelligence, which I've seen happening.
Yeah. That's another thing, right? Just abdicating and just giving, and it's not always correct because oftentimes it hallucinates.
And it could be, I mean, there is always context, right? How much of a detail did you put in the prompt? Like, always be thinking. Sometimes I think that in the not too distant future, societal divisions will be along the lines of thinkers of non thinkers, meaning real creators and the consumers of others' creation. It's kind of almost already that way. But only one of those classes will have real power.
Wow. Tell me more. I love this topic. This is fascinating.
I think if you're in charge of the creation, I think if you're in charge of the narrative, and the same, like it cuts across so many issues, whether you're a board of directors or trustees, whether you're a C suite leadership team, whether you're an individual contributor or end user, whether you're a marketing leader, it like works, applies equally to everyone. And this
Right.
is the factor that we very often, for instance, in marketing to forget about is the human being, right? So a lot of the time, I mean, go to any LinkedIn feed, go to most marketing shows. It's all about the tech stack. It's all about the next trick, the next little variation that will make that difference. And everybody's looking to the tech stack. And by the way, yeah, the tech stack has amazing possibilities out there to bring that improvement. But then I sometimes see gigantic marketing teams with 60 marketers, 400 marketers, and their performance is so subpar because guess what? Their leadership has forgotten that it's all about people. how the people use the tech stack, what decisions are made, are the people in the right seat at the right time? All of these are factors. How effective is your team?
Right. But do you think that maybe with AI being able to make so many decisions that we all become we all become consumers, or will the natural thinkers continue to think and be the ones that give better prompts and utilize these tools?
I'm optimistic that there will always be the natural thinkers out there, like because remember all those tools too, AI and everything, it's never going to fully supplant humans because it's humans who feed that beast, right?
Yeah.
It's humans that maintain the technology behind it. It's none of that is happening magically. So we will see an ascendance of new roles, new jobs, new things. I mean, you know, um, marketing has changed, right? Maybe, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, we weren't around as marketers, but they were doing entirely different marketing. I'm sure they were like typing things out, putting them in envelopes, sometimes manually.
Right.
It's not the same universe. It doesn't mean that marketing jobs have disappeared. In fact, they're more plentiful, but it's looking to the quality and things will evolve and we have to always keep evolving with the technology and with the reality, but we cannot overlook the human fact.
How are you mentally preparing in the marketing side for AI? Because I definitely have heard that, Eric Schmidt was talking about general intelligence in 5 years, and timeline seems to be getting more and more condensed. And you know, how do you approach it?
I think, things we're doing today did not even exist 5 or even 10 years ago, yet we're thriving, right? It's having an open mindset to keep on learning, to keep on working on yourself, not thinking that, but being open to the change and actually getting ahead of the change, right? So these days, it's not just even enough to be with the change because the only constant we really have in our lives is change.
Right.
That's the only constant. So some people are adept at change, others are not. But if you know how you're mentally wired, you can keep driving, improving, and doing better. And now I'm a huge believer in Gallup's Clifton Strengths Finder, right? Because
Yes.
it looks at people's strengths rather than focusing on weaknesses. And I'm a huge evangelist and believer in that because I've seen it really make a difference for teams and as a Gallup strength certified coach.
Can you just kind of set it up for people? I've taken this test. I love it, but how would you describe this Gallup Strength Finder?
So, John Clifton, who created that well over 50 years ago, is one of the fathers of positive psychology. And he said, what happens if, because let's face it, most of corporate America works from negativity, especially when it comes to performance reviews. Thou shall improve this, thou shall improve that. And what a lot of the time that does is clips people's way. And whatever is positive about the person is not even validated. And John Clifton said, what happens if we start looking at people's positives? So, through painstaking research, he identified 34 types, strengths, which are really innate talents that we all have because we're all wired a certain way, right?
Right.
So, and it's interesting. Fundamentally, is the top 10 that make a difference, but their basic test gives you top five. Initially, I know that John Clifton even wanted to just launch the top one because if we know what our strengths are, we can lean on them differently and we can amplify our outcomes and we can all be better. And then all of us have this cocktail of strengths. There are 34 of them. So the top 10 really matter for you. But even if you master your top five, you're going to be way ahead in your outcomes because if you know how you think, you know how you relate to the world, you know what your strengths are, you can lean on those. And most people cannot highlight those strengths. Honestly, until I took the test, I did not have total clarity about my own. But looking at the test results was like life changing because I was looking at a mirror, just very well described me in the result.
Yeah.
And so what that does, that empowers you to understand not just the full cocktail, but what are the ingredients that make the cocktail.
And I think on their site, they even showed us like a DNA strand, you know? It's like the different parts and pieces that make you you.
Exactly. So I think we're in a world where we need to know what we're made of
Mhm.
and lean on that and keep learning and improving and have the mindset to achieve things the same way. In the city, you can get to a certain destination via different roads. But the same is true in life. We could get to different outcomes or through different routes to a different outcome.
Right. Right. Different paths, but we still get to similar destinations. I wonder, it could let's talk about the string fighter. So and I'll be the sacrificial guinea pig here.
You've taken the test.
I have. Yes. I can tell you my 5 here. I know we've chatted a little bit about this in the past.
These do. So what are they?
Yeah, so woo, um,
Move.
uh, communication, futuristic, strategic, ideation. A little bit of competition in there too. A little bit of competition. But that's just because I hung out with Salesforce too long.
That's great. Yeah. Um, you know what? You're in an ideal role.
Yeah,
Woo, people who have woo, they're kind of like the social butterflies, right?
yeah,
You like connecting people. You like going to, let's say, if you will not shy away from going to a party. You probably broker a lot of introduction, bringing people together. They're this kind of social glue. What's
mm,
interesting, some people may almost resent people with woo, thinking they're super active. But if they understand that these people are doing this way because they try to be intensely helpful through making meaningful connections,
right.
changes the picture. So they're not self promoters, but they're connectors.
Hmm. Yeah, I just love people. Love people.
Exactly. And so by hosting this podcast, you're ideally positioned, right, for that role. People communication is your next strength. Did the woo resonate with you?
The woo. Yeah, what? Actually, I'm glad you bring that up. I, I took this a long time ago and was early in my career. Totally recommend it for people, especially. I mean, take it anytime, but like it was helpful for me because I was working in downtown Boston, doing my thing, and there were all these events, marketing events everywhere, and I just remember going to them, but always being kind of shy, and sometimes it was like, pull out the Red Bull and vodka maybe to kind of loosen up a little bit, but I wanted to go to them, but I didn't know why. And then I took this test and it said, "Hey, woo, man, is your strength." And then I leaned into it, as opposed to trying to fix your flaw, your whatever's at the bottom of this list that doesn't show up. It's like, no, wow, I'm woo, okay. Maybe I can go to these events. And so it actually was eye opening for me to be able to go, okay, maybe there is something special here and I should do more about it. And it really impacted me. I definitely, I owned into it, when that result came about.
Well, it's interesting. Everybody's a little reticent about going to cocktail parties because they think everybody knows everybody else. Well, that's not true. They think everybody else has all these interesting conversations. Well, that's not true. So everybody's feeling the same thing. So if you go with the understanding that everybody's in this position, you're bound to fare better. And then you've probably seen that some people come and they clump together because they're just like, really afraid to move and meet new people. People with woo are less like that. They're actually willing to make introductions.
Yeah. Yeah. Even out with friends, even before being in the professional world, I was always a very good opener at like, a bunch of friends were all playing whatever. And there's another group of people. I'm totally down for just saying hi to all of them, you know, and just introducing my group to another group to another group.
As a teenager, you probably were the one who's like, let's go to the movies or let's go hang out at the mall or something, right?
Yeah, I tend to be the person that tries to get people to do things. Yeah. You know what's weird though? I sometimes wish other people did that to me, you know?
But they don't necessarily have it, which is own yours, and that's okay. And that's what makes diversity diversity. Imagine if everybody was the same.
Yeah, we're all a bunch of woos running around.
Life would be boring and very similar. So it's that
Yeah.
that's your strength. That's what you're bringing to the group, and deep down, they probably appreciate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. I bet. Okay, so yeah, I mean, these things are great. I love these things, and people should totally check them out. Gallup, GALLUP.com, Strength Finder. Definitely worth it, right? Definitely. And then to talk real quick about teams, and I want to take you in the SAS direction, but can you talk about teams with this?
So imagine when you know how the people on your team are wired, or
Yeah.
if you know how leadership is wired, you perceive communications very differently. Like I worked with a colleague who had input. People with input, they like to collect information. So think of them a little bit like information hoarders. They need
Mm,
a lot of information. Again, they're doing this with the idea of being relentlessly helpful. And then they might actually be sharing stuff with others, which sometimes might be interpreted as what he doesn't think I know my job or this stuff. But no, they're doing this with the idea of being helpful.
yeah.
So for this colleague, if I were to propose something because I knew he had input, I would like shower him in data and information because that's where their comfort level is. They need more data, they need more information to comfortably make a decision. Now, think of it this way. If I come and present to them and I don't know they have input, they're going to keep asking me for more and more and more. And I would then, or anybody in my position, would likely get frustrated thinking, what, he doesn't trust me. He keeps asking for more. But the reality is he's wired for more information. So shower proactively that person with more information. You know how to get to their mind and heart, in essence, to their decision making. Or I knew a CEO who had restorative, and restorative people, they're like fixers of broken things. So for this, they're wired to fix broken things. So for the CEO, you could potentially move mountains, would get a quick acknowledgement, but then they would look for instance for the next thing to fix. So if you know that's the person, you're not going to take it personally onto yourself saying he or she is never pleased. They're, they're wired that way. In fact, I've found many leaders who have that restorative in them, right? They're just wired that way. And maybe that's what gets them there because they keep trying to improve and fix things. Strategic, it's my number 5. It's your number 4.
Yep. We have some overlaps there.
You think of pattern, right? You kind of tend to stand back and see what is the pattern? What's happening here? What's the approach we're taking? You have futuristic as your number 3. I have it as my number 4. Guess what? Futuristic has saved me a lot of money in real life because I'm futuristic people don't quite need to see a staged furnished piece of property to buy.
Right.
So I've gone into unfurnished, unstaged properties and bought them at a way better price because others cannot necessarily see it without staging.
And what I love about this is like each one is a treasure trove. So finding out what your team's strengths are, then it it it's so fun because you find out, oh wow, it's not about having the overlap as much as the collecting different kinds of strengths, than
Well, if
really.
you see them as people,
Yeah.
and when as a leader, you see your team members as peoples rather than like the door of outbound marketing,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you can elevate them. They feel more valued, more appreciated. They feel seen. And again, in our life, we all move so fast. A lot of leaders don't have time for them, but guess what? It's costing them. In
Mhm.
fact, um, bad leadership costs companies annually, per Gallup's research, $650 billion. Let me repeat that. $650 billion.
Wow.
That's a tremendous financial loss. That's like the lost opportunity cost, the turnover, the demotivation. It's like more than several European countries' annual economies combined.
Jeez. Like, yeah, the costs are real.
Those costs are real. So bad leadership, lack of leadership. But with Gallup, you can actually understand what the people's strengths are. You can maximize it, you can amplify them, and you can improve your outcome. And you can improve the effectiveness and efficiency of your team. You can also learn sometimes about your biases. Like I do a strengths grid, and sometimes I'll see, okay, this area is completely missing. I was working with a leader uh, whose team is very heavy on the relationship side. But guess what? They're very empty on the execution side. These are people that actually love going to the office when they have the option of working from home.
Right.
Because then if you go into their office, you'll see their kitchen is fully stocked. It's like they almost live there because they love the social interaction. So they're there primarily for relationships. Now, getting things does take a longer time.
Yeah. It just speaks to that speaks to my DNA, the idea of coming into the office and enjoying the connection with everyone else. It's so awesome.
There is meaning to them. Well, some things you can only do in person. I loved when I worked at Intertech, a huge, at the time was 3.5 billion in annual revenue. And it had a very visionary CEO and head of HR. The CEO was Wolfhard Hauser, head of HR was Jonathan Loris. I'm still in touch with Jonathan Loris. And what they believed in is that in large companies like that, you can grow and thrive only if you run them as small entrepreneurial unit. So if you're entrepreneurial, which I was, you got to accomplish.
Right.
But they had one very firm belief: when you're driving change for change management, it can't be done over email. You have to go in person, which explained my extensive travel. When you go in person, when you humanize the situation, that makes a difference on outcome.
Well, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like we could talk all day about the people, but 100% starting at the people, I think, is the place to be at. And the other thing, I kind of circling back around to your myth, even, was the idea of the tech side and where we go wrong with that. And we talked about AI and people now. So how do you optimize the tech stack? How do you improve performance?
First of all, it's interesting. Most people want to buy more. In my experience, most people have too much and they're not properly using their tech stack. I'd rather take like 5 big pieces of the tech stack and use them really well and really shine on those than use only a tiny bit of this, tiny bit of that. Then that creates this gigantic confusion and a sense of overwhelm, and then nothing gets accomplished. Too much of a good thing is not a good thing because again, it comes down to people. Why did client support as a profession rise? By the way, it was driven by a software company because they realized people were buying their software and not renewing because they didn't know how to use it.
They didn't, yeah, they just didn't know. And so they would keep buying more of it.
And then they buy more, and then they buy this. In the meantime, you're battling exhaustion with your troops because now they have to learn a new technology, new stuff, and then they become really jaded. They do not believe anything and then what's interesting sometimes, I mean, I'm a very fast mover, but you have to give time to something to germinate.
Yeah, that's true.
And then because when you plant a seed, it does not flourish and give you fruits and right away, right?
No. I planted a tree. I'm still waiting for it to do something.
I planted a lilac bush, and it seems to be coming back. I'm excited.
Oh, good. So yeah, it takes time, like the investment, but there's so much in marketing that's focused on the now, you know?
And that it's again, you have to do certain things for now, for sure. Execution trumps the best strategy, and you have to execute consistently. But then you also have to have this, little playground where you experiment with things, and then you have to have your short term, midterm, long term. Like your best is when you have a strategy and you consistently execute on it. For instance, if your strategy is digital domination, it's not like, oh, I did this one time. It's building your website. It's staying on top of it. It's making the updates. It's just that work is never really done, but then you end up on the first page of Google search results.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does that go? Do you think SaaS goes away with AI, or does this problem get worse? Does it get noisier?
It's interesting. I think it will get noisier for a lot of people, but then there will always be ones who will step aside, figure it out, do it differently. Don't shy away from original thinking in this. You know, I remember, I'm in Boston, so you're in New England.
Mhm.
HubSpot, it's a story of meteoric rise. Two guys, they're at MIT, the founders, and then they decide, hey, we want to do this. And now it's valued at over $1 billion, big company, right? Great success story. They're
Yeah.
amazing at content. They, in essence, coined the concept of inbound. Great success. But in an interview, they said initially, when everybody was telling them to zig, they zagged. When conventional thinking is, oh, companies should do this, they do.
Mhm.
So I think those that zag effectively and separate themselves from the masses, the hordes, and the crowd will always have a better outcome and experience. But it takes courage to do that. It
Right.
actually takes courage to separate yourself from the pack.
Right. Because there's the safety, just like with everything else we talked about, there's safety and what people have done before, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do,
Yeah.
and is to follow people in that path.
And it could have been the right thing 5 years ago, but then by the time everybody's doing it, it loses its luster. It's kind of fashion is like that too,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
it is.
Somebody wears a type of cardigan and then everybody's wearing the same cardigan, but then that becomes so done. People move. Just an example.
100%. Um, so let's chat for a moment about you. So, like, you've been, company side, and now you're actually helping multiple companies out. And what are the kind of things you're doing? How are you helping teams?
It's a three-pronged thing. So we do state-of-the-art digital marketing along with strategic planning, especially for boards of directors, for leadership but it's different. It's done with buy-in, not a stream of consciousness document. And we also focus on creating effective teams, especially between marketing and sales, working from Gallup's Strengths Finder, understanding how people are wired, how to make the team more effective, how to improve communications and how to improve the outcomes. It's a holistic approach to marketing, really, when you think about it, and to organization building. I mean, frankly, I don't think marketers have done a good job to communicate the importance of what they do. Because in many ways, marketing today is very boom, 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 do it now. And sometimes people think, oh, marketing is like as fast as you can press send on an email or a text message. But to build that marketing machine, yes, you have to be fast, but you also have to be guided in the right direction, strategic, and have that execution effective machine. And to build that machine, you need to completely rely on the right people to do it right, to do inspired marketing, not to just go through the motions.
Yes. Inspired marketing, not through the motions. And that's the only way to separate yourself out as things get noisier and busier and crazier. Where do people go if they want to connect with you? They want to get more information.
Sure, they can connect with me on my email, jasmine@strategyark.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn, Jasmine Martirossian. And then our website is www.strategyark.com. Ark is spelled with a K. So strategyark.com.
Ark with a K. Are you collecting all kinds of marketers in there?
We have some really
2x2?
the whole idea is inspired by Mount Ara, the Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
And, the Ark had a solution for the future for everything. And that's behind the wisdom of our company. And,
Gotcha.
and having the solution for the future will help you secure your future in these changing times.
100%. So powerful. All right. So Strategy Ark. And, if they want to discuss, the situation there and get more intentional, that's something you could do on a call.
Absolutely. I'd love talking with people, rising tide lifts all the ships. So when
Yeah.
marketing teams improve, it improves the entire organization. Marketing and sales, that's the other thing. They have to really collaborate very closely and understand each other, their approaches, their pain points.
Really need to collaborate. Absolutely.
Truly, everybody says they collaborate.
Yeah. They all say it.
Reality, a lot of them are at each other's throats.
Yeah. Everyone says it, but actually doing it is a completely different thing. 100%. Well, Jasmine, really, next question is really, what does the next year look like for you?
I think it's exciting. It's about growing, improving, honestly following the same mantra, changing and improving and not feeling settled ever, right? My number one is achiever, speaking of Gallup strengths, which means I'm very driven, but I'm never working from satisfaction. It's like, actually, it's never as if I wake up and say, perfect, we've arrived. I'm like, always, I could do more, I could do better. It's that search, actually being curious and having a sense of wonder. I think that helps both people and organizations grow.
100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Like coming back for the second time. Hopefully there's a third, a fourth, or the fifth. Like this has been fantastic. And I really appreciate you, really giving me some things to think about, the thinkers, the consumers, the negative brand experiences that stick with us all, and just not going right to SaaS. We want to optimize the people. It is so valuable. So this has just been a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. It's very nice of you to have me as your guest. Love being here.
Absolutely. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this with someone else. Be a thought leader, right? Who needs to hear this? Is someone impacting? Hey, next time someone impacts their brand negatively with you, send them this episode. Be like, you need to listen. You probably need to hire Jasmine to get you out of this hole here. But at the same time, who could really optimize their performance? And if you haven't done Strength Finder, for the love of God, go do that. And with that, Jasmine, thank you again for being on here.
Thank you so much, Casey.
All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.